Today I'm here with Chris, and I'm gonna really murder your name, Manongdo. Is that right?
Manongdo.
Manongdo. I knew I was gonna murder that name. I'm sorry about that. And
It's a Filipinos
Chris.
butcher it too.
Well, Chris is on our board for the BYU Management Society in Asia, so I'm so happy to introduce you to him. He's been a great asset for our Asia area board. And Chris, I thought maybe you could start out and tell us a little bit about yourself and about your time at BYU Hawaii and what sort of led you into doing this funny bit of work for us on the BYU Management Society in Asia.
Yeah. So I'm Chris. I graduated from BYU Hawaii with a degree in business management, emphasis on finance and in supply chain. I graduated last year of July and came home to the Philippines after that. While I was at BYU Hawaii, I got involved with a lot of groups and a lot of clubs. One of them was BYU Management Society for Hawaii. And that's really how I got started with BYUMS and how I became familiar with what the organization does and their goals for their members. And so when I came back to the Philippines and my uncle introduced us to BYUMS and he told us that, yeah, they're doing this great, amazing work in the Philippines and in other countries. I was like, yeah, I can't believe it. I was an officer in BYUMS Hawaii. And so I was so excited because I knew that there was so much great work to be done, especially in Asia. So I reached out. I was so excited, and here I am right now as one of the officers who really help out with finance and with moving forward with internships too.
Many of you may not know this, but Chris, you have two famous uncles, not just one. You
Oh,
want to tell us who your famous uncles are?
yeah.
First of all, the one
So
that works for BYU Management Society.
yeah. So in the Philippines, so my first uncle, which who I referred to BYMS is Philip Tan. He is the ACE director for the Philippines. And before that, he was already been so involved with the church, and he's done a lot. I look up to him a lot. My other famous uncle is Elder Michael Te of the Quorum of the 70. Currently, he serves as I think a counselor, I believe, for the Asia area.
Well, great, great. So you're absolutely famous. I think one of the things that I wanted to interview you and talk to you about today is a lot of people when they think about BYU Management Society, they might think about, well, this is kind of for older people, people that are older in their career. And maybe you could give us some thoughts about why do you think that this is for, younger people too, and what they can gain from it and what you've gained from it?
Yeah. So first off, like with BYU Hawaii, one of the things that I've learned that it was the only student-led organization, and there's a lot of students going on and about, but in other chapters it's usually those with a more established careers or who have more seasoned experience that usually join. But I would say that this is really beneficial. This is actually the perfect reason for younger students in the younger generation to get involved, even if they don't have degree or aren't currently pursuing a degree, as long as they have an interest in the field. Because number one, you get to network with amazing people. The last conference that we had in Singapore allowed me to connect with others that really helped broaden my horizons, especially about my career, and help me understand more about where I wanted to go and how I wanted to pursue that. And second is you get a totally different experience when you're in a room full of these amazing individuals who have started businesses, have very strong professional background, and also have a strong understanding of living the gospel and abiding by the standards of the church. It kind of gives you something to measure up to. There was a quote that I like that says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong place. And so definitely by mingling with people in BYUMS, you get to put yourself in a position where there's a lot of potential to learn and a lot of potential to absorb all the knowledge and the wisdom that is emanating from everyone in the room.
I really love that, and it made me think about. I'm trying to find the name of the podcast because I always forget the name of the podcast, but they interviewed the head of the Marriott Business School, and she talked about how the Marriott School's focus is all about sending people out into the world as Christ-like leaders. And I was wondering if that was anything that you gained from going to the Singapore conference about, here's these great leaders and people that have done great things, but yet they're such Christ-like men and women. Did you feel any of that while you were at that conference? And I will tell you in just a minute, 2 Point Conversion is the name of their podcast. And I highly recommend if anyone's looking for a Come Follow Me podcast by two BYU football players who are present football players. But I really love that thought about the Marriott School and making people become Christ-like leaders. And that's one of our focuses on the Management Society, moral and ethical leadership. I was just wondering, did you gain anything from the conference from that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember talking to a senior missionary who had a really good business. He could have retired for life. He was all set and he's serving his mission in Singapore. And I remember asking him why he chose to do this. Some people have dreamed of just being able to stop working to live their life to the fullest once they have retired. And his response to me was that there is no better way, there is no greater joy than being able to help those who preach the gospel to those who need it. And I thought deeply about that. And I remembered a good friend of mine I met at BYU Hawaii told me about the importance of really establishing a code of trust and a code of ethics. I think that a
Mm.
lot of time I think a lot of the times the standards and ethics that we have, especially in Asia, where there's a lot of regulations that tend to be very flexible and not really strongly enforced. But then you meet members of the church who build this relationship with other businesses, build this relationship with people on the basis of trust. And really, if you look about how other countries, any businesses have been successful, it's because they have a really good relationship with other people. We see how there is a strong need for the gospel, and it's much clearer to see that when you're in an area where you are forced to connect with others, and at the
Mm.
same time make sure that everyone is gaining something, that everyone's in a win-win situation instead of a win-lose where I should be the only one coming out on top and you're going to be struggling there at the bottom. No, it radiates more, especially in societies like this. I see a lot of research and a lot of people talking about, oh yeah, they do this, that. I think about it, it's like this is the standards that we have been taught in the church for centuries, and it
Right.
seems like the research is just coming out right now and the information is just spreading out right now, and we've had that for so long. And so it just proves to show that as as people really live the gospel and as people live Christ-like attributes, they stand to benefit the most from it. And yeah, that's one thing that I really really love, about these conferences and about the people I meet.
So, did you have any favorite talks or anything favorite that you learned?
My my favorite one was from this guy. He has his own management firm or financial management firm in in Singapore. And one of the things that I liked about is that he has all this complex knowledge. When you have a better understanding of finances and the markets and economics, you start to see the world kind of differently. And he could have gone off in that direction, especially with how interesting it was, but he chose to stick to the basic principles of budgeting and finance because it's a reminder that the first and foremost thing that you should do before you go into the lone and dreary wilderness, you first have to put your house in order. And that was the most important principle that I think everyone ought to learn, is that when you have your house in order, it becomes easier to face the lone and dreary wilderness of the world.
That's a great thought. One of the great things about BYU Management Society that I've always appreciated, or I appreciate more now, I think, is the fact that we could, even though we're associated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we're able to do things that maybe the church is not able to do. And I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that, like some of the programs that we do in the area or other things, and how those programs can help maybe people of your age. For example, like launching leaders, the mentorship. We've been talking about internship programs, and just those are things that I think people your age can gain through joining BYU Management Society. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Right. And so with the church, right, their main focus really is to let people know more about the gospel. And what
Mm,
BYUMS does, right, is it focuses on the principles of self-reliance and to help people be able to sustain themselves. Now, the thing I like about BYUMS, along with there's several other chapters, but the thing that's great about it is that we start to target this area, we specialize in this area, and we're able to point it to Jesus Christ, but we talk more about specializing in this field and growing in this field. There's there's a saying in Tagalog that goes like ang Diyos na ba ang bahala, which is the Lord will take care of it. But one of
mm,
the great things about what we focus on is we teach people, although the Lord is willing to take care of you and he has the power to take care of you, he has also given you your agency to be agents unto yourselves and
mm,
make the right decisions and to build your skill set. Because one of the things that we ought to remember is that we are also sent here to earth to grow and to develop. And so we can get that faith part right, but without that growth and development part, uh, part of our part of the purpose of our spiritual journey just doesn't get accomplished. And so we really put a lot of emphasis on that. And it's also a great way to show people that you start developing and you start focusing on what you can do, you realize there's a lot more than you can do.
mm.
There's a lot more in your power, and as you take accountability, you realize that your opportunities just open up and it's just starts to flood in. I I remember it so clearly before going to college, thinking that everyone else was to blame, the government was to blame for everything. If we live
Yeah.
if we live a very poor life in the Philippines, there's much of those factors are because of external forces. And people may be right to an extent to thinking that, but
Mm.
they forego their ability to they forego their ability to make decisions, to open those doors for themselves, and to even be instruments in the Lord's hands. So much wasted potential there, and it's great that BYMS is focusing on that, reinforcing that aspect to its members.
Speaking about the Management Society, I was today texting something to AC Ho, who's in Singapore, and you know AC.
Hmm.
And he said that Viktor Frankl had said something about, you're just talking about, people talking about their own situations. And Viktor Frankl in his book said something, what is the situation asking of me? And I thought that was really great thought. When you find yourselves in hardships or difficult times, maybe you need to ask yourself, what is the situation asking of me? what can I learn from this? What can I do? Anyways, that's just sort of a side note. But as you were talking about, the Filipinos and some of their attitudes toward that, I think we could ask ourselves those things. What's the situation asking of me? What can I learn from this? Why, not so much like why is this happening or, poor me or pity me. Instead, what can I learn from this? And I think it's very easy for us as human beings to go to the poor me, pity me, I have no choice. And one of the great things I love about the management society is, like you said, you meet people who have overcome, and some who have overcome great odds to do great things. And I've always loved and appreciated that about learning some of those things from the management society itself. So, do you have any other thoughts for anybody of your age and as to why they, should be part of this organization that we have here? I mean, people have lots of choices, lots of different things they can join. Why, I guess, why would you tell someone why join the BYU Management Society?
Well, first of all, is first of all, I don't see a reason why they shouldn't. For me, I'm the kind of person that if an opportunity opens and it doesn't close other doors of opportunity, why
Mm.
not take it and why not be involved in it? And for students and for the younger generation, if you see something like BYUMS whose objective is to help you build a better career, to teach you principles that are reinforced by the gospel of Jesus Christ and are looking to be in a room full of people who have gone through what you have gone through, um,
Or you
seeking
might
other
go through,
opportunities. Yeah, or you
or
might
you
go
may
through.
go through, right? We can learn a lot through mentors. That's one of the focuses of the management society is, we can learn from the mentors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to change the question here now a little bit, and I want to talk a minute about one of our focuses in the area has been the focus of One Asia. And One Asia, bringing all Asia together. And I just was wondering if you had any thoughts about having attended the conference. What did it mean to you to see some of the fellow BYU, get to know face to face and become friends with, hopefully, with some of the fellow BYU Management Society members from other parts of Asia? How did you have any feeling on that, and how did that impact you and impact your life?
Yeah, so that Singapore conference reminded me a lot about what it was like to be in BYU Hawaii because you're surrounded by people with very different backgrounds. I remember what it was like thinking that I knew everything, and then coming to BYU Hawaii, you start to understand and gain a little more sympathy for what people went through, what it's like to make decisions in their environment.
Mm.
And you become less critical, you become less judgmental, and you become more understanding with the conference and with BYU MS1 Asia. You kind of wish you kind of wish that there were no borders, that
Yeah.
that was easier to visit one another, that airfare was cheaper, and that we have a better system in place, because there are a lot of amazing and hardworking people, and they survived and they thrived because of the culture that they lived on. you know Not everyone's pathway to success is the same. It's going to be different, especially for people from
Mhm.
different countries, but you start to gain an understanding of why this works for them. I'm very grateful for where I work right now. Part of my job as an equity researcher is to study these companies in Asia. And so
Mm.
to gain a better understanding of these companies, you need to know what their regulations and their government and their culture
Mm.
is like.
Mm.
And it's amazing to see what works for them, and you start to take the good parts of it. It's like, okay, this is amazing. How can I
Mm.
implement that in my own life? How can I implement that in the Filipino culture? How can we more establish that? What needs to change and how can we get there? You know, you take all the amazing stuff and hopefully you have a better, more evolved culture than you did previously. You know, that's the best thing that you could take from a multicultural setting such as BYUMS Asia.
And you also, like you brought something up too, which made me think about it. One of our focuses for BYUMS Asia, One Asia, is to kind of show that people can come home to their own countries and be successful. And I hopefully you saw that when you were at the Singapore conference, seeing some of the successful people there, that you can be in your own countries and be successful. Did that have an impact on you?
Yeah. So let me try and think of my words very carefully because, you know, I don't want to be a hypocrite and say that if I had the opportunity to stay in the US, I wouldn't take it.
Hmm.
I certainly wouldn't I wouldn't blame people for not wanting to go back because hearing their stories and hearing about the things that make it harder, especially in some countries where your natural rights as a human being is not really strongly enforced.
Right.
But I do in what I say, I'm hoping that it gives a little more comfort to some students in returning home because I remember a few weeks into going home, I remember not having a job lined up. I remember panicking where I'm going to live. I remember how the whole point of coming to getting a degree was so that I don't go home relying on my parents for money and
Mm,
for my basic needs. I remember just panicking. What am I going to do? Because it's definitely going to feel like starting over. You've been gone for so long,
mm,
and it feels like you're going back to square one. And then I remember just trying to do the best that I can. I kept looking for jobs. I kept looking for answers. I kept thinking of possible solutions. But the most important thing was that I kept praying and kept being faithful because I knew that cutting God out of my life was not going to make my situation better.
mm,
A few weeks before leaving home, I get interviewed for a job that was remote based, so I get to work from home. The pay is good enough that I'm able to live on my own and sustain myself,
mm,
and
mm,
I'm able to live quite a decent life. And there are also several other doors of opportunities that were open to me. And what I hope to say to people is to students especially is to don't let fear get in the way. Don't let it stop you from seeking opportunities. Don't think that it's a dead end going home, but rather to think, what can you do? There's this great poem that my mother keeps reciting to me, and she keeps reciting this to me. She's uh, for every problem under the sun, there is a solution, or there is none. If there's a solution, hurry and find it. If there is none, then never mind it. The ultimate
That's
lesson from
great.
that, yeah, the ultimate lesson that I got from that is that you do everything in your power to look for ways to become successful. And when you've done everything that you can and there's nothing else to be done, you leave the rest to God, who is all knowing, all powerful, and all present, and trust that He has something worked out to you. It might not be in the way that you'd hope or expect,
Mm,
but it's definitely going to lead to some amazing things. I never thought I'd be living the life that I live right now. I'm very happy, and I'm very, I
mm,
would have never imagined that
mm,
this would be my life. To put some perspective, for Filipinos, not everyone has an air conditioned home. I got an air. I
mm,
never thought that I'd ever get to sleep in an air conditioned room, and here I am every night. I get to sleep with that. I
Right.
I get to eat without worrying about where my food's going to come from. I have enough
Mm,
savings that would last me
mm,
for a good amount until I find another job. And I have and then BYUMS comes along, and here I go to
mm,
meet these amazing people
mm,
who understands you, who not only just who not only knows what it's like, but truly has a desire to help you become more than who you are, regardless of your background. I never imagined that. And I'm so glad that things worked out. And so I hope that people learn to be more faithful and to just take the leap.
That's a that's a really, really great thought because I was just thinking too, when you were going through that, you didn't know BYUMS, and there wasn't BYUMS in the Philippines as they're starting to be now, or in other parts of Asia. So we hope that those that are looking to go back and in your situation will try to connect to BYUMS. And while they're in Hawaii, that they'll try to connect with BYUMS in their home. So when they do make that leap, it's not such a hard leap to make. Do you think that if you had BYUMS, if you'd known about BYUMS at Hawaii and made and there was one here in the Philippines, maybe your leap would have been a little easier?
Yeah, it would have made me panic less, and I'd be able to sleep better at night.
Right, right, right. And so I think, that's just we were talking about why young people should join. Well, that's the reason why, especially BYU Hawaii students. I hope you're listening. That is why you should join. And you should be, in understanding what your home chapters are doing. So when you do have to make that leap, you have somewhere to leap into.
Yeah. If I may add, I hope
Mm.
more students get involved. I have I have a friend who's coming home this April, or no, no, no. Oh yeah, this month. He's coming home this month. And for months I've been telling him, you gotta join this. You gotta be a part of this. You and I, we're one of the few BYU Hawaii students, and we're gonna be building opportunities for them. And
Mm,
we both have connections with the people we've spoken with, and we see the path clear. We need to be able to help those people. We need to be able to help those students take a leap of faith and to, make the jump. We need to have this system ready, because and we need to make it as BYU Hawaii student friendly, or basically any student who's coming home friendly, because you and I know what it's like to panic and to be worried.
mm.
We're also the people who can sympathize with them and be able to help clear the path for them. So I'm very, very excited. I'm very, very excited as a BYU Hawaii graduate to be able to build these opportunities for them, because I know what it's like to be afraid. And I hope that this becomes a much better system to relieve them of some of those fears and get, you know, lower their heart rates a bit instead of worrying all the time.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's really some great thoughts. I really appreciate you taking the time today to speak with us, Chris. And I guess in closing, is there any advice or anything you'd like to add to what we discussed today?
Yes.
Or do you have any lasting thoughts or advice or another poem by your mother that we could recite?
Now, the first thought that comes to mind is to take accountability and have faith. That's the principle that has opened so many doors for me in BYU Hawaii, and that's the same principle that has opened so many doors to me here. I've whew, I remember being really a very nervous student. In fact, one person was talking to my friend and was like, I wish Chris was a little more outgoing. He seems to be so shy. It's like, yeah, I'm not that same kind of person anymore. And it's all because I knew where I was going. I knew what I had to do to get there. I took accountability for every mistake, everything that went wrong, and learned from it. And then after I've done all that, I leave the rest to God and have faith, thinking that there's going to be something at the end. There's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. Just leave it all to Him.
Well, I have to say, I learned a lot from you today. So I really appreciate you spending some time with me and with our other listeners out there so we could get to know you a little bit better. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time today to talk with me and to have this conversation. I hope that others will learn from it and that they'll realize that BYU Management Society is here for you and to help you, and that they will join with us and become part of this great organization. I just want to point out that you don't have to be a BYU graduate, it's an organization open to all. We welcome everybody to join with us and to join with the BYU Management Society, everyone throughout Asia. So thank you, Chris, so much for talking to us today.
Yeah, thanks so much.